What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 30 of the Overview. I'm ChanManV, and on today's show, I'm joined with my co-host, Fishstix, and our two guests today will be Flame, who is an analyst player who's been on the show a couple weeks in a row now, and also a first-time guest, one of our favorite Overwatch casters, ZP, is going to be joining the mix. We are going to be talking a lot about the Halloween patch, as well as some Sombra news. Lots of esports player news, players switching teams, being dropped off of teams. We're going to go into all that, and as well as a bunch of esports events that are going on, including the APAC event in China, as well as the OGN Apex event in Korea, and Alienware monthly melee here in the North America. So we're going to jump right in the show. Hope you enjoy. Yeah, continue on. I mean, like to your point, ZP. Yeah, it's really cool that we're getting. Whenever we get these batches, it's like a full load of things. You know, like there's tons of skins, tons of player icons, and even some player intros, as well as some voice lines. Just a full feature, and it's so cool because we paid for it, right? And now we're getting everything free. It's like that $40 are just we just keep getting value from that $40.
Well, the PvE side of it, I think, is really cool, too, just because it does appeal to people. We've seen in other games where people enjoy that sort of content where, as much as, of course, a lot of us here have a big focus on the esports side of things and all the rest, there's a lot to be said for bringing people in saying, hey, I just want to hang out with my friends, grab 3 people, and shoot some zombots in the new mode.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people saw this coming with TF2 having some pretty successful experiments with PvE, and let's be honest, Blizzard has borrowed a lot from that game. So a lot of people kind of suspected that this was coming, and I think it's good. It's definitely good to have something that caters even more than quick play, that caters to the most casual of audiences. And yeah, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but people on Reddit are saying that this is actually a really good way to warm up and practice aim. I don't know if that's true or not, but
well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, even pros, will go into the training bot server where they just kind of run around in circles in that small whatever, like hilltop or mountaintop map. So this is definitely a good alternative. I guess back to what you were saying about TF2, there were actually people that took the PvE mode more seriously than anything else.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
A lot of people actually, and there was a lot of pride that went into like that whole mode because there were actually like skins and things you could get by only playing that mode. Like there were like exclusive skins to that one mode, so there were people who were like hoarding them, and like it had like a rank associated with it. Like you had an SR essentially for, or at least like a level of how many times you had done it. So if you came into there and it was like your first or second time, you would actually get flamed by the people who had like 200 rounds of it.
Right.
Like it was crazy. So the only thing I'm upset about is that it only lasts until the first. Like this is when Lucio Ball
tavern
came out,
brawl, right? So
yeah, people were like,
"I'm not brawl. Just it's a brawl." I keep saying tavern brawl.
Yeah, it's a brawl. I wish Lucio Ball stuck around, but like this one, I actually really wish would stick around.
Yeah,
like,
and for those
like
of you
a separate queue or something.
Those of you wondering what we're talking about, the brawl right now is this new survival mode PvE game that you play, and there's only 4 players, so you can only choose McCree, Soldier, Ana, and what was the last one? Hanzo, right? Pretty much all the hit scan characters, and yeah, so you're just trying to survive the whole time. And you only lose when everybody's dead all at once. So you can respawn after, I think it's 15 seconds or so, maybe 12 seconds. But on hard mode, it's pretty challenging. It's definitely a lot of fun on hard mode. So give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, another thing about the match, somebody's saying in chat too, is that one of the cool thing about this this new event is that the skins are purchasable now too, which is one of the big complaints everybody had about the summer games, is that once it's gone, it's like we're screwed, or at least we're screwed for a year, right? When the summer games comes back. So this is really nice. They made it more expensive, so everything's 3 times more expensive, but it's nice. It's nice that I can go back and get my favorite Roadhog skin if I don't get lucky at all.
Well, it solves the issue where you had people that would say buy 200 Summer Games loot boxes and then go, wait, I bought 200 and I still don't have a Mericree. Now you have the option where even if you had 0 currency to begin with, you could buy a whole bunch of boxes and certainly get the skin you're looking for. Even if you don't get it directly, you would get enough currency to grab it on the side. So, I mean, it's just a nice extra option to have in there for people where they don't feel like it's still going to encourage people to buy loot boxes, but it's not going to make people feel like they're getting overly exploited or anything like that.
Really? Because I almost feel the opposite. Well, not that they're getting exploited. Not that they're getting exploited, but I guess in the long term, in my head, because like as someone who had bought, I think I bought, I don't know, like I think I bought 2 packs of the loot boxes from the summer games, and like you had so many, I had so many coins left over. I know that there's a lot of players that had a lot of coins left over. Like even now, like having 5 or 6K banked isn't too crazy. So like now you definitely don't have to buy cases for this, but I think that this is an easy way to empty out everybody's coin accounts. Does that make sense? Like empty out all their coins. So for the next patch, like that's when the crates are going to start becoming very, very popular again.
Well, I mean,
sure, like having a
just
coin dump
generally.
is
Yeah,
having a coin dump is a good thing.
I'm just talking long term.
But even in the long term, I guess the point here is that you're not going to get a situation which you had in the last patch where you could drop $200 and then not get the skin. Right now, you're guaranteed to get what you want at a reasonable sum to some extent.
Sure.
And the players that play a lot might already have a bank where they can get what they want immediately and not have to throw stuff in. So it just feels more fair overall.
Yeah, I mean, just the general monetization model is, of course, there's a coin dump, right? I mean, otherwise it'd be crazy pay to win. I mean, not pay to win, but just like you'd have to pay for everything, and that'd just be terrible. So it's a typical model, and it's definitely good. Here are some of the skins. Which are your favorite skins? Like, have you guys gotten a chance to look at all of them?
Favorite skin?
I mean, I feel like there's a really obvious answer here. Right,
well,
guys?
I mean, people got different tastes.
Witch Mercy.
People got different tastes.
I was gonna say the Reinhardt with the flaming head.
What? See, everybody's got a different. Dude, that's definitely not my favorite. Even though I main
that's
Reinhardt.
definitely not my favorite. That's not even probably top 3 to be honest with you.
Yeah, me either.
Flaming Reinhardt actually, I think, might be number 2.
really? Oh my god! Okay, here's Flaming Reinhardt, guys.
I think the Eichenwald skin's still better than it. I don't know.
Dude, Eichenwald skin does not have a flaming head.
I mean, I came from TF2, so like unusual hats is not a new thing to me. Like that's.
I mean, granted, like everything else about this skin is literally just like a color, just a different color. So it's literally just the flaming head that's different. But it's top 5 for me probably, but not top 2 for sure. I mean,
damn.
I think Roadhog, the Frankenhog, is definitely my favorite one. Nobody else's favorite? This one?
No, I like the Roadhog one, but for some reason the Animask is like the coolest thing to me. For some reason, like it's so simple, but that skin just makes her look so like
the Ana
sick.
One?
Yeah, like the Ana one. Like I don't know why I'm drawn to it, but that mask
cool
is so
one.
good.
It's also only 750.
Here it is.
It's on the cheaper side too. So
no, that's Hanzo. Shoot.
Yeah, it's a budget. It's a budget sleeper for sure.
Yeah, that's just that mask. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like it's barely even different, but just it's so it just gives you a totally different connotation.
It's clean mask.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing too, I like how the love is being spread around too, where the heroes that got a whole bunch of love in summer games.
Yeah.
Well, the heroes that didn't get any love, they are now getting love here in Halloween, and then I'm sure when we get to Christmas, if that is a thing, we'll be seeing the heroes that have been sort of left out getting their form there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I like
You're
the
totally
Michael.
right, though, ZP. Witch Mercy is badass.
Yeah, I think that's the. I think everybody was anticipating this one, and she looks great. Actually, she looks great.
Very good point. How many people are actually just going to go into overdrive, going, "Wait, BlizzCon's coming up. I need to now." Like, I'm throwing aside all my other cosplay plans, and I'm making a cosplay of this Halloween scene.
Totally, dude.
Because the Reinhardt skin cosplay at TwitchCon was actually won our cosplay competition and was the sickest shit I've ever seen from a cosplay competition. Yeah. And when did Lionheart come out? Like 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, it came out pretty recently.
Yeah. So this guy obviously dropped everything to build this skin.
Just like,
I don't even know how he even
Lionheart.
walked. That guy, I don't even know how he walked. I would have loved to have seen. I know he had to have been on stilts because he was much taller and bigger, and I don't even know if he had extensions to his arms too. But it was definitely extremely impressive that Reinhardt. So
actually, think about it. If you're quick enough, it's double duty because you get it done in time for Halloween. You can wear it at Halloween and for BlizzCon.
It's only like a week difference. I mean, you just
not even right. It's like 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the one. I mean, it's not one of my favorites, but I did like the fact that Soldier 76 is like a homage to Michael Jackson's Thriller outfit. That's pretty cool.
I think he has a taunt too or something. I think he has like a Thriller taunt or.
Oh, does he? Oh, I didn't even know he did.
I didn't look at it. I just heard. I'm not sure what it is.
Definitely cool. But yeah, go ahead and check it out, guys. There's lots of cool skins, and again, like you can purchase them for 3,000. Actually, some of these, like the Reinhardt one, the coolest thing about that is that it's only 750. It's actually an epic, not a legendary. So that's not even one of the more expensive ones. All right.
All right.
So I think other than that, like just from the standpoint of just the rest of the stuff, there's victory poses too, and let's see, even voice lines, lots of stuff to definitely check out there. Let's see the next.
Did you guys see the Diva victory pose with the tombstone? It's got
Which
it's
one
got
was that?
Doritos. Like it's like a Easter egg because the victory pose you only see it from one side, but when you're looking at it in your loot box, you can actually rotate it, and there's Doritos on the back of it.
Oh, is there? Oh, I didn't even know that.
It's on Reddit.
It's on Reddit. Yeah, the
It's
victory.
one of those things that you'll never see in the normal game, but just for anyone who's rotated it, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I guess in addition to just all the new stuff and the new brawl, a lot of the changes that were on the PTR now for the last like few weeks now, almost a month, got rolled out too. So just to kind of rehash some of those things, let me bring that up. Not too many changes. We talked about it on previous shows too, but we figured we'd just maybe touch on it just briefly, at least with ZP, who hasn't been on before. So Ana, her boost obviously being at least the cost of it increased by 20, and Bionic Grenade, the radius increasing, which was interesting. Widow.
All right,
what do you guys
overall,
think?
Overall, it might be a buff to Ana in the end. I mean, she's not going to get all quite as quickly, but the thing is, she's going to have much more potential for gigantic team healing just because the grenade radius was rather small before. And she's going to have much bigger potential to land big grenades on the enemy team where you hit 2-3 people where before you might have hit 0. So I feel like it opens up Ana's playstyle a bit. And overall, a 20% nerf to something that charged at warp speed before, it'll be felt, but not as much as people might think. So I'm sort of, maybe it ends up as a nerf, but there's a lot of ways it can actually end up as a buff to Ana.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I like the tone of the changes. I wouldn't mind even seeing the ult have even more cost because you could build it in 30 seconds. So now it's going to take 35 seconds. It's really a very small difference. But I know this is going to sound stupid, but using math, 3 to 4 meters, it only sounds like it's 25% bigger, right? Or sorry, 1/3 bigger.
Yeah.
Now my math is I'm second guessing everything. the way that geometry works, folks, this is almost double the radius. It goes from about 28 total surface area in total in meters to over 50. So you're almost doubling the actual radius of these biotic grenades. I just want everyone to realize that.
You mean the area?
It's only 1 more meter. No, it's actually like way bigger, almost twice as big.
I learned that even from playing games like Heroes of the Storm. It's just like, okay, we've increased this ability radius by 20%. And you're just like, oh, that's not that much. And then you go in the game, it's like, oh my goodness, this is a huge increase. It's just one of those things where the numbers on face value don't necessarily look that intimidating. And then you actually play with it and go, okay, this is actually a huge buff to this particular skill.
Yeah, and we were talking also, like one of the previous episodes, that the nano boost, even it taking a little bit longer, there are times where, especially when the Beyblade meta being as big as it was, you just be waiting anyways, right? You'd be waiting on the Reaper to get his ult first, so it wasn't like you were just trying to spam that ultimate as quickly as you could anyways. So having it take just a little bit longer, it was a slight, of course it was a nerf, but it wasn't as big of a nerf as it sounds.
The thing with Nano, though, is it's so good that a lot of times you can use it to build the Reaper ult outright, and then for the next fight have it up together. Maybe it'll desync it a little bit. Because don't forget, the way a lot of it works is that not only is the person doing more damage and all the rest, but that also factors into their ult charge. So it's sort of why you have Reapers with nonstop ult after ult, Reinhardts with ult after ult. Well, because they're building a lot more while under Nano boost, which is a bit harsh.
Yeah, I think overall, we can all agree that, or we're in the consensus that it's more of a buff than a nerf. Widowmaker, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is going to, are we going to see more Widowmakers on Pro Scene?
I guess I'll take that. Go ahead.
Like it'll feel better for sure, because I think that Widow scope felt bad. I think there was like a bug or something, right, where it was like taking too long on the first scope in the clip. There was like something that just got patched recently, not this. And then there's this that makes it a third of a second instead of half a second to scope in. So I think like you'll get shots off faster, but I don't think it doesn't change the rate of fire of the gun as far as as far as I know. So like this will help quick scoping, definitely, because your first shot will roll off faster. And I guess if you're like trying to kill Annas, it'll probably be easier because you'll have that extra, what is it, 1700ths of a second to get a shot off. As far as people actually picking her, I think it might not happen. I mean, teams might start swapping to it, but only on offense if they feel like they can get away with it. But that will probably be the only time you'll see it, and only on certain maps where the line of sight is good enough. Because I feel like you're still going to want, like, I don't know what hero you would replace her with. Like, you'd have to get rid of, I guess, either your Reaper or your Mei or something, right? Like, one of your DPS non-Zarya Reinhardt heroes. So, you have to make the case for, is Widowmaker going to be stronger or have bigger game impact at that point? And that's where I think she might come in sometimes, but not often enough. I don't know, ZP, what do you think?
I think Widow, it's one of those things where it's going to take the one team that comes out here with Widow and does really well with it, because in the end of it, you're talking about a hero that it does feel like a better change in terms of just like usability. It feels really good to play on her now, but you're still dealing with a hero that when played to her max ability is shooting off 300 damage railgun cannons, basically, if you can hit someone's head. And people aren't always going to be behind Rhine shields. And it's also a game where if you get a quick pick and you're 65, your odds of winning the next fight skyrocket. So I've always felt Widow, even after the nerfs, has been the case where people tend to overreact. They don't go to it. They leave it out for a time. And this might finally spur in a team to go, actually, we're going to spend a lot of time on this, start getting consistent picks with Widow on, say, offense, and then force a complete meta change. It really would not surprise me. Obviously, it's harder to do than it was in the past, but that doesn't mean that I guess the state what I'm saying here with Widow is that Widow is a character where she's either going to do absolutely nothing and feel like a waste, or feel just disgustingly oppressive. And when you're not getting to the latter stage, you're not going to use it too much. But if someone can get to that latter stage a little bit more often, it might trigger a huge chain reaction where you see her much more frequently than you see her now. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
Ben, any comments on that? Nope. Okay.
I just hope we see more Widow, honestly. That's all. I don't know if this is going to be big enough, but
the cool thing about Widow, if nothing else, is that Widow makes the game a little bit more unpredictable on what team is going to win fights. Right now, for a lot of team fights, you can sort of look at the ult economy of both teams and get a really good idea of what team has a more of a sure win than the other. But when Widow was more in the meta, and Hanzo has done this a little bit to some extent, when you have the potential of someone just getting picked off before you can get into the entire phase where everyone's set up with ults, it adds a lot more unpredictability to how fights go down.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Junkrat, Riptire now activates more quickly. You know, the times I played with it, it definitely did seem a lot faster than... I don't know if you guys got a chance to experience it or not in the PTR, but I'm not sure if it's like fast enough that I could just literally fall from like above and land right in the middle of a bunch of people and then just like rip it and explode. But it's getting closer to that. What do you guys think of this change?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think it's just more quality of life than anything. I felt like, I mean, Junkrat Tire is probably one of the more, I don't know, I say balanced, but it's one of the harder to execute ults in terms of getting kills, but it also has like a very good implication. Like you hear the Junkrat Tire, it changes the way you have to like look at corners and stuff all of a sudden. But I felt like there were some times where you'd want to use it, but you felt like you didn't have time to, or you would get rushed or killed before you could get it off. And I think that's where this comes in. It's definitely a buff, like just a straight buff, and it's definitely gonna help his case, I guess, on certain maybe like 2CP maps or even like maps like Dorado, where maybe now you can get kills a little bit easier. But I mean, Junkrat still suffers from the same problems that he has, which is like no anti-air really, and no his presence is really lacking unless there's like a very obvious choke to be spamming into.
Well, I would argue Junkrat suffers from an even bigger thing than those things. It's not even about his ability to kill people right now. It's more the fact that we're in a meta where if you do poke damage, but you don't actually get a kill, you're actually sealing your team's fate, because then the supports on the other team build their ult quicker, and support ultimates are among the strongest in the game. Seen very much so in looking at Ana, but also still sound barriers, transcendences, reses, all the rest. So the game right now, because it's so oppressive towards heroes that poke without getting direct kills, it makes it rougher for, say, Junkrat and 76 than it might otherwise be under different circumstances.
Yeah, plus the Zarya factor is also...
Yeah, Zarya shield's another thing. We're just like, please don't poke damage. So it's a little bit unfortunate right now for Junkrat, and I think to a lesser extent 76, because it definitely hurts him as well.
Yeah, man, Junkrat's had a precipitous drop in the competitive scene lately. I mean, if you go back to the Atlantic Showdown, we actually saw Junkrat used very effectively especially on defense, especially on 2CP, but in certain situations he was super effective. And he basically has dropped off completely. Like, nobody is picking Junkrat in any situation right now. And I think this is a good change, but will it bring him back into the competitive scene? I'm not sure. I mean, obviously he gets played in ranked, but I don't know.
I mean, so what ZP said, there's no counter to a fast nano boost. So
exactly.
Running a hero that gives you nano boost even faster potentially is like not gonna help.
Yeah, because what happens right now, and say, let's take a map like Hollywood, right? Now spookified Hollywood for those who haven't logged in this patch, but you go in on Hollywood, the Junkrat's spamming you, he doesn't get any kills, and the Ana's just sitting here, uses the brand new biotic grenade that hit everyone with a huge heal, then left clicks them all. The Junkrat hasn't killed anyone, and now they have a nano boost while your Ana is sitting at 20%. You're going to lose the next fight, and that's sort of. I think there's something to be said, and a lot of people have been floating this, where maybe at some point how supports build ultimate should be changed a little bit, where maybe it's like half you boost their contribution over time for the ult and then decrease how much healing gives, just to standardize a little bit more and not punish poke damage so severely.
Yeah, I had that idea like back in closed beta. Like I felt like tanks shouldn't be giving the same amount of ult charge from their HP as like a tracer. Like doing 200 HP, like doing 200 damage to a tracer should be rewarded more than doing 200 damage to a Roadhog or something. But yeah, I mean, so we'll worry about that in the future. Right now, Junkrat's not going anywhere. It's I guess the moral of this story.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, but everything else that's part of this update. Well, I think the main other thing was that the pause button is going to be, just
spec mode improvements.
Oh, spec mode improvements too. Yeah, there's going to be static cameras, and I didn't get a chance to play too much with it, so I'm really excited to get a chance to see some of the events using it and how it's going to do. I know what it looks like. Definitely the new layout and everything is better than the old one, but just some of the tools that they added will be cool to see.
The player profiles and the UI, like I'm a big fan of fonts in general. I mean, it's just like a nerd thing, but I like the new.
Cool. I love fonts, man.
I love the new fonts that they have in the UI. It's a lot cleaner, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And even just reading the player levels on the screen is a lot easier now.
I think it's interesting that Overwatch, even from the very first beta, the initial reaction from people was, wow, this is one of the most polished games I've ever played. And then you patch after patch hits, and the polish difference just continues to go up. You compare Overwatch right now to any of the competing FPS games that are coming out, and it's just actually insane, the level of difference that you get between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I heard FPS went up. I haven't checked. I haven't actually played today, but I heard people's FPS was more stable in this patch than previous. So kudos to them on that front too, if that's true.
Yeah, I definitely like the fact that they do try different layouts, aesthetics. Yeah, that's one thing we didn't talk about, even just with the general game too. Is some of the I think the social tab or the whole page, has a different layout as well as a career profile. Even the portraits. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the little portraits even of each of the heroes is a little bit different now. I like the fact that they try it.
It looks sharper.
Yeah, doesn't it? It looks a little bit. Me and my son were talking about it too. It's cool. It's good that they're willing to try it, and if it doesn't, then they just try a different one. They've been pretty bold with some of the different choices along the way. Some were good, some weren't, but right now I think we're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, it's definitely getting better. I mean, there were definitely times in the past month or so where I've watched like replays or something of matches, and I'm like, I actually have no idea how much ult this person has. I can't see it, or I don't actually know what. Yeah, or I can't actually read the timer on this King of the Hill map, but I'm sure it says something like this. Like it'll just remove more uncertainty, which I think is just good.
Yeah. Well, anyways, let's move on through some more of the news. Another comic came out. It's not officially on comics. Play Overwatch, but this was actually pre-Halloween patch. So a lot of people were talking about at the time. The Junkenstein comic. You can check that out here, which I'll link in the Twitch chat, so you can check that out. It's cool. It's like a nice little Halloween type of issue of the comic. And also Sombra was leaked. So that was actually big news a few days ago. Just an image of Sombra with some text, and people were kind of reading into it. And people were wondering if today, October 11th being this kind of key day, was going to be Sombra coming out. But there's no way, guys. Okay, Sombra, for everybody that's wondering, Sombra has to be announced at BlizzCon. I don't know what else they would announce if it wasn't. Looks like we lost ZP here. But so Sombra, I guess let's talk about Sombra. Do you think that it was a true leak here, or?
I'm so confused about something here.
Yeah.
Why would the image be a photo taken of a screen? if
it is
somebody
kind of
found the
weird,
leak,
right? It is definitely
why
weird.
wouldn't they screenshot it? That makes absolutely no sense to me. It makes me think this is either fake or Blizzard is purposefully leaking this in a weird, shady way just to make it even more mysterious.
I hope
Who knows?
it's not
Maybe it was just
that.
somebody that didn't know that they can capture screen regions on their monitor. I don't know, but what? Like I feel like no one, for some reason, no one was talking about this on Reddit or whatever. Why wasn't this screenshotted? Why was it a photo, a crappy photo? Even
right.
I've returned.
That's very suspect.
Hey. Yeah, I know it is. We were talking about Sombra, ZP. Welcome back.
Do you think that is that true? I feel like if I was like, because it had to have come from internal at Blizzard, right? Like the picture, at least somebody had to have. It had to have been an employee, right? Because it came off their network supposedly. Like that's the story behind it anyway. So I feel like you wouldn't even risk being the one to take the print screen because you don't even want
Maybe
that
that's
ever
it.
to be like. You don't want any traceability coming back to you. Like if it was actually a leak and not like a plant, then that's like that's like you're getting fired. So
Can I just note, by the way, how appropriate it is
easier.
that my truly reliable Comcast internet decided to go out right as we started talking about Sombra? And the timing there is actually phenomenal. Those who
that's
don't know, there was
funny.
a ridiculous Comcast outage last night. It was the worst. There was all sorts of tweets about it. It was miserable. And I guess to what your guys are saying here.
Before you keep going, ZP, start your cam when you get a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
There
Alright,
you
I'm
go.
back.
There you are. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
But
Sombra
as you were
cannot
saying,
keep me down. But no, I was just gonna say. I mean, I would just say like I don't know where that came from, whether it be false, true, whatever it might be. But if it is a leak, I just think that the person is incredibly foolish, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Yeah. What do you think she is? I mean, are we still thinking? I mean, the only thing that at least I think that we have right now is that she's going to have something stealth associated with her, whether making teammates stealth or maybe she has some kind of short stealth ability. But from that picture, can you guys try pull anything off of it? I mean, she has a submachine gun, so we know that much, right?
It might be a hit scan gun, which would be interesting. Though definitely add another layer of hero pool to a lot of your already good hit scan players in the game. So that'd be interesting. Of course, there's no guarantee that would be a hit scan based on it, if that is in fact a thing. But I don't know. That part would definitely. I think for me, it's always just cool to look at. Is like, is this hero going to be a DPS? What players are going to be taking it up? Where if it was say projectile, then it'd be more in the realm of your Taviks or Seagulls.
Right. Right.
I mean, I have a bigger problem, I guess, with heroes that come out now is that there's not much room to swap out. Does that make sense? Like there's only like 3 roles maybe that you could say you could swap out at any given time.
Right.
And the Lucio has to stay, the Reinhardt has to stay, and generally like the Reaper McCree has to stay, like whatever that hero is. So if she's not an assault class, like I'll assume she's not an assault class. She doesn't really look like an assault class. I'll put her more in like that weird Symmetra-esque or like the Hanzo-esque, like the defensive supportish heroes. Like she has to be better than Zarya then, or have more utility than Ana.
Yeah.
So like that's where I start questioning her. I mean, maybe she'll prove me wrong. Maybe she is crazy good and she will be played, but I have a hard time finding a way for them to make a hero that is stronger than Zarya straight up.
We don't know anything about the hero though, in terms of like what individual matchups it might have. And just to give you an example right now, where you don't look at it on a face value until you actually see it play on games. Right now you have the entire dynamic of say McCree versus Genji, where Genji really does well when there's not a McCree in the game, but if a McCree comes into the game, a lot of times you can shut down Genji. Although that's not even an auto win from the McCree by any means. But
that's assault classes, right?
Yeah.
But
it's like maybe there's a case where theoretically Sombra comes out and she has a really, really good matchup against Zarya, where you never want to run a Zarya against Sombra for one reason or another. Like
that's what I mean. She'd have to be stronger than Zarya, I guess, was where I'm going with this.
I guess that
not even
brings
necessarily stronger than Zarya, just good against Zarya.
Yeah.
I guess that does bring up just I guess a follow-up question, which is do you like the fact that they're just introducing one character at a time every time they do this, or would you prefer them save up about 4 characters or something, so that there could be combinations, instead of us looking at like, okay, you got to sub, how can you fit somebody for the current meta, and thinking of it from that standpoint instead of just like thinking about just brand new complete different compositions.
No, I mean, to that point, you could. I don't know if you need multiple heroes to do that. Like, if this hero is actually good, like super good, and at a point where you would want to build around her, you could definitely. Teams will find a way to do that. The only fear that I have, I guess, when you add new heroes is that I feel like some of the ults in this game are like, or just some of the abilities rather, are just already super strong. So like, you need to find some, like when Anna came out, nobody really played her at the beginning, and I think that they buffed maybe her rate of fire or something in one patch.
And clip size.
Yeah, and her clip size, and then all of a sudden everyone's picking her, and now you're getting nano boosts, and like you think to yourself like, is there going to be a hero that can be stronger than nano boost or something, or like stronger than graviton? Because I think that the ults are becoming very meta, or like the meta is starting to revolve more around ults more so than other things.
Definitely.
So it's becoming one of those questions like, can this thing be better than Earthshatter? Like, I don't know. That's how I'm kind of starting to look at it, or new heroes in general. Because we saw, we'll talk about this later when it comes to the Korea versus Europe matchups that we saw, but the way that they play around certain heroes I think is really cool. But right now it's very like Anna-centric, I guess.
I will say this to the health of the game question and all the rest. It's one of those things where I know there's a lot more that goes into making an Overwatch hero than say making a Heroes of the Storm hero and all the rest. As far as making FPS heroes is more complicated because you're more likely to have overlap. You need a more like unique design. There's less tropes to rely on and so on and so forth. But there's part of me that still wishes that we got heroes even a little bit sooner than they are. I feel like it's one of those things where anytime you release a new hero, you get a dramatic influx of new people playing the game to like check everything out. Now there might be the idea is that, well, if you had more heroes coming out even more frequently, then maybe you save up 3 and have like mini expansion packs that come out that really bump the player base. But for now, my gut feel is that it almost feels like it was too long before since Ana came out just to
I'd agree with
get
that.
more people playing the game again.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's still the second most purchased PC game of all time. With 15 million copies. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
It's crazy how big it is, but I'm greedy there here, Ben, where it's just like, I just want people playing it nonstop all the time. So the more times you can release a new hero and keep the numbers at a ridiculous rate, like that's even better in my book.
I think they're just trying to keep that balance as as steady as possible, and obviously just adding one at a time is the ability to keep it in a reasonable state constantly is much easier than bringing a bunch or one every like 2 months or so. I think because like you said, Ana didn't get played for almost a couple months, and it wasn't so it took like that long before she was even considered, and maybe it took a little bit of buffing and nerfing just to encourage it too. But once it kicked in, it did take that amount of time. So I think at least 3 months between characters, but I'd like to see 2 characters at a time though instead of just one. I think that would be kind of cool.
I feel like they have so much on their plate. I mean, I'm not making
they
excuses
do.
for them. I feel like there's so much. I feel like there's so much still that they have to work on. So I'm not complaining, but
Well,
this
fair
is a
fight
major
too. Like
thing,
it's different teams, right? Like sometimes there are some people that end up getting pulled to work on everything, like particularly your engine people and implementation and all the rest. But in general, the guy that's sitting there thinking about, okay, this would be a really cool hero, I'm prototyping. It is not the same guy who's say working on matchmaking or the same guy who's working on UI things. All the rest.
But
Like
it's probably the same guy that's working on all the skins for Halloween. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the UI
the design team's different. But the modeling team, like the people that do the actual art and the in-game, like all the renders and stuff, are probably both. I don't know. I'm not.
The artists.
I just think it's a hard.
I see what you mean.
It's a hard topic.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean the team is, there's limit to what they can do, and Jeff's made it very clear in his videos as to what they've prioritized, and it's been awesome that he's been that transparent. So yeah, we can't have everything, guys, but it's definitely something. Adding characters I think affects the metagame.
But they hinted at another hero that's like that. He made it seem like it wasn't Sombra, like that was coming in like. November.
If Sombra doesn't come in November, I think I'm just gonna.
Yeah, so like he made it sound like we're getting 2 heroes soon anyway. But I agree. Back to what ZP was saying, like it needs to be a good hero. Like there's a lot that goes into it. So
I think she actually looks interesting. If you look carefully at the image, she's got what looks to be like grenades or something on her belt, and then she's got these spiky gloves, these like fingertip gloves. So that makes me think she's going to have some kind of AoE-ish type ability with the grenade thingies on her belt, and maybe some kind of melee.
Yeah.
Actually, we had NL_Prey in chat saying, would love something like an EMP canceling ability. Who knows? Maybe she's just pure crowd control, and we haven't seen any character with like an ability that makes it so other people can't use their abilities. So
someone had this idea. I don't know where they got it, but it was something like if like her nuke, they thought someone, I don't know if it was like a leak or whatever, but someone was saying that like her nuke might be the opposite of like a nano boost, where it's like you nerf enemy healing, you nerf enemy damage output in like an AoE. So like an ana nuke that instead of stopping them from healing, it like nerfs their damage output. So like you would throw it on someone that's nano boosted or something.
Right,
right. Like lower their damage output, lower their healing incoming and stuff. But I don't know.
So a counter to a counter. It's like all these like counter Q basically.
If she's a straight counter to Ana, then she's definitely going to be played, and we'll figure out
I
when
see.
and where.
Yeah. Anyway, she looks interesting, and definitely can't wait to see when she's announced. And hopefully, it wasn't a mistake. It was just like part of this whole marketing scheme for announcing Sombra. All right. Well, esports. Let's talk about esports. There's a ton to talk about. So, Ben, why don't you lead us through the esports news here?
Sure. Actually, one of the more interesting weeks in competitive Overwatch. There have been a ton of roster changes on a lot of the top teams, as well as some really surprising results from the tournaments going on over in Asia right now. But I think we can start with some of the stuff that's been going on here in the West and talk about Cloud9. A lot of people have been thinking that this was coming for months and months and months now, because Cloud9 frankly hasn't been performing where they should or where they had previously. So it turns out that in the end, Grego has departed Cloud9, and also it looks like Debet and Reaver have also departed the team, although that hasn't been 100% confirmed. To my knowledge.
As far as I know, that is confirmed between the two. And I know the thing for Debet is that Debet had the entire case where he just has a job in finance. It's a good job, and he can't bring himself to break away just to go full-time esports. And then for Reaver, I think it's just a case where I think someone mentioned just anxiety over stuff, and it makes sense where you saw Reaver's performance go from one of the most dominant DPS in the game to just like this sort of slow decline. But both of them, it was voluntary, and no one was kicked, I will add.
Yeah, and actually, they've been extremely sportsmanlike on social media and stuff like that, saying, thank you, it was such a pleasure to play with you, it's such a memorable experience, things like this. So it seems like an amicable, realistic, good decision for everyone involved. And to replace them, I think the replacements are almost more interesting than the fact that these guys are departing. Mendo is finally on a high-level team again, or at least trialing. So you've got Mendo and Rib, who played out of his mind, of course, for Misfits, and then Wolf, who's been kind of floating around as well, are the replacements, or at least the trials right now. So this particular roster, we're going to get to it a little bit later, but this particular roster was able to take home a win in the Alienware monthly melee just a couple of days ago. ZP had the pleasure of casting that. So this new roster seems like it's working out so far.
The roster actually improved dramatically from day one to day two as well. And day one, they ended up losing the Team Liquid. And day two, they're able to avenge themselves. And it did feel like they had more explosiveness than they had before. Certainly, I think Mendo on the second DPS role, if the behind-the-scenes stuff works out for C9, I think can work out very well for them. It'll give them more of a 1-2 combo punch than they've had in a while. Although that's just the key thing with Mendo, right, is that Mendo is a sort of interesting personality in the Overwatch community. A lot of players have been on teams with them where they didn't really enjoy the experience. And the question is, for C9, is he going to mesh well behind the scenes? If he can find a way of making it work, I think C9 could be pretty darn scary. But that's still a big if, because a lot goes into, can you make practice times? Can you wake up reliably? Can your teammates rely on you to show up for something big? And those were all things that Mendo had issues with in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just imagine Mendo and Surefour as a DPS?
Oh my god!
Does it get any scarier than that?
That is pretty sick. That would rival the top.
Tavik and Surefour?
Well, we had Tavik and Mendo for a while, right?
We did.
That was pretty sick. Yeah, Tavik. Well, which is better, Tavik and Surefour? Let's talk. Tavik and Surefour.
I'll put Mendo on a different. I wouldn't. I don't like comparing Tavik and Mendo for some reason. Like, I feel like their skill sets are a little different.
Yeah,
but
I'd agree with that.
As far as Mendo's concerned, like, I know back when, like, closed beta, when everyone was playing, and, like, Mendo was on a team, I think he was playing with, what was it, like, Reunited at one point, or he was playing with IDDQD.
IDDQD was...
He was jumping Reunited around for 2 weeks, then IDDQD.
Yeah, he was getting around, but, like, point being, like, he's really kind of buckled down. Like, he used to be a really... he was just, like, the definition of, like, an angsty kid, you know? Like, that's how I pictured him in closed beta. And then he went to, what was it, Take TV Land? Was it Take TV? It was like they did like a home story
that's
cup
right.
or
Yeah,
something.
it
Yeah.
was.
And he casted, and he like, I feel like he grew up there in some way, and now he's been streaming like nonstop, and his stream is actually really good, and I feel like it's blown up to the point where it's like humbled him in some ways. So from like a personality standpoint, I feel like I watched a kid grow up since last year in Mendo. So I'm not
That's
really
great.
scared, I guess, from their personality standpoints anymore.
But the stream is also potentially a problem. The other thing, where once you get used to the streaming thing, you build it for several months, you don't want to give it up. As
Yeah.
we've seen with Seagull, you definitely get to a point where you can't really dedicate as much to your stream. You have to choose between streaming or the pro gaming type thing. And if I could see an issue there where Mendo still tries the bite from both ends and says, you know what, I want to do the streaming and do so C9, ends up burning himself up and ends up oversleeping for stuff, ends up having those issues.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
As well as
100%, 100%.
it's totally something that C9 has to watch out for as it goes forward.
Yeah. I just meant, I guess, more he's not as controversial, I don't think, anymore. Like, he's not spamming smiley faces in all chat or calling out people for missing headshots or something, or keeping tally of the Widowmaker 1v1 scoring.
Oh man, the good old days between
man.
the two easy.
Yeah, like there was a time, like there were times for that, and I think that time has passed. But no, they're definitely scary, that team, and the Rib pickup is so huge.
Oh,
actually,
Rib.
like Rib is just a monster, man. Like as
Overwatch
far as
Open?
people that I feel like are just
Ridiculous.
consistently good, like, and the fact that he's consistently good as like a ringer, like he'll just jump from team to team and be consistent. Like I feel like that's what
Yeah.
makes him so scary. Like imagine him with proper coaching on like a proper team with like long-term practice, like he can only get better, and I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of roster changes this week, so don't want to spend too much time going into it. But Reunited also had a change. Kib, who really made a name for himself as one of the best Genjis in the scene, has actually decided to drop off the team on the active roster. So this guy was an upstart young kid who played out of his mind at the Atlantic Showdown, played very, very well. He just decided to step down, actually. He decided that this lifestyle may not be what he's looking for. Who knows? He might end up on another roster eventually, but he steps down from the team. Still going to remain with Reunited, but going to remain with Reunited as a streamer and not an active player on their full-time roster. So Onigod has replaced him, which is kind of interesting because Onigod seems to be their new pick for Zarya. So it's not like a one-to-one replacement. So that kind of opens things up for Unfixed to play a little bit more DPS. But what do you guys think about this change?
I think it's just one of those things where people take for granted that everyone can handle going to esports and dropping everything they're doing for it. And it's actually pretty rough where if you're not the type of person that's inclined to travel to go, hey, can you drop everything you're doing and come here to Seoul for 2 months? Come to this country where things are radically different just for 2 months. It's one of those things where I totally understand where Kib is coming from here. And it's one of those cases where not everyone is a super big fan of travel. I do think it's a big blow to a Reunited roster that's already having trouble, as evidenced at E-League, where they weren't really in tune with the meta. They had one of their worst showings that they've ever had, and now they have to go to Korea and not only get over whatever was ailing them, and now get used to having a new teammate on who has big shoes to fill in Kib. It's not the greatest of times for Reunited.
Yeah, the timing is what makes this whole scenario really bad, or at least in my opinion, just like very questionable. Like they waited. I mean, E-League roster locked everybody. Like we're seeing all these roster transactions happen now only because E-League's over.
Yeah, and I think the OGN thing, I don't know how far in advance they had to commit to it, but it kind of jumped. I mean, I was surprised by the 4 teams having to be there for 12 weeks. So I wonder how much notice a lot of these times had too, and that's a lot of commitment. I mean, this is like to the point where you have to commit to doing this, like full time or not. Just kind of like what ZP was alluding to, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that, and it's fair too, because it's still a little bit unknown as to what the future of Overwatch esports is. I think it's a little bit clearer than it was like 6 months ago, but it is still a big deal for a lot of people to commit that kind of time and lifestyle and whatnot. Going over to Korea, I mean, thankfully at least these guys have there's 6 of them, right? I mean, some of the stories that we hear from like StarCraft 2, there's people going, it's lonely going over there, like when you can't speak the language and you don't really have that many that group of friends to go out with and just to get acclimated there. So it's good that they at least have each other, but they better like each other. That's for sure. Because if you don't,
I guess
it's
like,
pretty bad.
to that question, or I guess to that point, do you think that they knew? Like, this whole thing was very sudden, and I almost wonder if he had known that he wasn't going to go to Korea before, when they had said that they were going. Because I don't know if I'm reunited if I say, okay, we'll go to Korea for 12 weeks if we know we're playing with a changed up roster. Like, I don't know, Reunited's in a weird pickle right now, but I just want to know how, like, I'm more curious as to like how they got in this situation as opposed to, or like why they let this situation happen.
I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I will say that there is a general theme in Overwatch where the scene is exploding so quickly, so rapidly, that the notice you get for events is oftentimes very, very little. I remember before going over to London, I had less than a week's notice, and that's on the casting end. And that's just a case where things come together very quickly and people are going about it. It's one of those things, things prop up out of nowhere and it's just like, okay, we're going to go for this. And it leaves people with very little time to adapt. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is a case where it did get dropped on Reunited pretty quickly. They had to make a snap decision and Kib was just like, man, I can't do it.
Yeah. And if you're Reunited, it's like, how can you turn down, like, not going to the OGN League? I mean, the OGN League is next to the the APAC, which the first time we've seen Western teams play any of the Asian team. The OGN League, I feel like is more, we've got 4 teams over there. They're all split in different groups, and it's more of a true testament of a global esport, or a global Overwatch league. So it's hard for them to turn that down, even if they weren't ready. If it was just, I guess if they were just the 3 people left or something like that, then I think maybe that's a different story. But with one person leaving, I could totally see them still committing to it.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are all in. They own, the players are part owners in the Reunited org. So
yeah, that's right.
They're obviously very motivated to keep things going. Let's just hope that things work out, because we're going to get to this in a second, but not looking so great so far with Onigod, the one game that they've played together, the 1 week they've been together with this current roster. But we're going to finish out the roster changes with Dignitas, who has cut a couple players. So Dignitas is another team that's been underperforming based on where we thought they should be or where they were in the past. And these changes are not a huge surprise either. They've ended up cutting Numlocked and Artir. And this kind of makes sense in ZP. I feel like I know what you're already going to be saying here. Like, Dignitas was kind of in a crisis where they were switching. Like, Artir at points,
but they got rid of the wrong people is the problem. If you're gonna go, like, so here's the issue, which blew my mind when I looked at this, because for me, the top 3 members on Dignitas, point blank, and in order, well, actually, not in order. Number 1 is definitely Linkser, and then after that, Numlocked and Artir were clearly number 2 and number 3. You can argue who was where, and I will tell you where Dignitas went down the wrong path. Is that Dignitas was doing great up until the patch that nerfed 76 and buffed McCree. Now, I remember right before that patch, lots of people, I think including me and you, Ben, and just in general, are like, wow, this patch is going to be great for Dignitas. Our tier has put more time on McCree than anyone, has one of the most devastating McCrees in the game. We see him do great things time and time again. And I think this patch is going to be really good for them. And what happens in that patch comes down. Bromos goes from 76 main to McCree main, and we never see Artir and McCree again. And Bromos doesn't even replicate a third of Artir's effectiveness on the hero. And Dignitas never changes. It blew my mind. And now the fact that Artir is off the team and Bromos is still on there as main DPS. Listen, I have no hate for Bromos, but just objectively, that's where the problems start with Dignitas, and this doesn't help them.
I mean, I guess I'll talk to that point more, is like the internal team politics is like the worst thing in the world, honestly. Like, dealing with your lead, like whoever's in charge of your org versus like who's the person that talks to Dignitas as a sponsor, like who's the in-game leader, who's the one who's technically the leader on all the pages, who's friends with who, like stuff like that is like the most infuriating stuff in esports, I think, and like the most stressful part for any player, like me included when I was playing. So there's clearly, like, that clearly came into play here, I think. I don't know who's friends with who's better friends with who knows who better, who likes who better. But you can tell that there was definitely some internal issues, because I agree. I mean, I remember our tier in beta, because like when you're in the NA scene during closed beta, you weren't really playing much with the Europeans. But our tier like made a name for himself in closed beta as like one of the top McCree, and like I think he was a Widowmaker player, right? Or Linkser was the Widow, and he was
Linkser was more Widow. Our tier was more McCree. He was McCree, rain, sleet, or shine. When McCree wasn't all that great, he found a way of making it work, and that's why everyone was so pumped to
Yeah.
go, okay,
Yeah.
McCree's getting buffed again. You were going to see him in everything, and we did see him in everything for a while, but now we get to see R tier bring it. And what happens? Bromos swoops in, says he's a better McCree than R tier, and R tier never gets to play the hero again. And surprise, surprise, Dignitas doesn't win anything after that either. So it's just,
And
this
Seth-
is one of those things I feel passionate about, just because I feel like I got robbed of seeing R tier just do terrible things to people on McCree.
Well, I mean, it's one of those like blessing in disguise things, right? Like they might be better than that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trying to like knock on Dignitas, but maybe them getting released isn't the end of the world. Like they'll find teams like Seb or Numlock. Seb's like very good at games. Like Seb was 15 years old. He became one of the best TF2 players like in history. Like when you talk, I mean, you guys aren't TF2 buffs, but when you talk about like the best demo men in TF2 like ever, Seb or Numlock's name comes up in the discussion. And he went on to quit TF2 to play League, and I think he got he didn't get like super deep in League, but he was like, I guess at the top of the non-professional scene, or maybe he was at like the bottom of the professional scene. I don't know his credentials in League, but he's just a gamer, and he was definitely like so good at Winston and Reinhardt. Like he played well, so I guess it had to have been a personality or like a internal.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
Personal.
They'll find teams, you know, like those two will definitely.
Yeah,
find
and,
No
teams.
question.
And to your point, like Numlocked, as far as his Reinhardt play, was absolutely great. I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
those things where I remember looking at that. It was never Reinhardt where I looked at it and go, man, this Reinhardt's costing him games. He had incredibly solid production on Reinhardt overall. And if there was any problem with Dignitas over time, it's that there was definitely issues on the support side of things, where I remember watching games where Drakeus was on Lucio and made just baffling decisions, just not good sound barriers, got picked off early. And then from the DPS side of things, Bromos, you look at all the games that Dignitas has never really had the breakout crazy moments on a DPS that you can see from players like Artier when he was on McCree, like IDDQD, like Taimu. He's not at that point. And it feels like when Dignitas committed and doubled down on that decision and moved Artier off of that and put Bromos as the guy, they've never recovered.
Yeah, they don't have replacements, do they?
Well, they do have
Sorry,
replacements, right?
They flame?
Oh, they do have replacements.
Evo and Vaneless.
Yeah, Evo.
Yeah, they've been replaced by great players. I mean, both Evo and Vaneless have been around since the very early days, neither of which have really solidified on a super high level roster for a big amount of time. But I mean, if there's any silver lining here, I'm hoping that it means we're going to see more Genji from Linkser, which is certainly possible with this switch up. But yeah, I mean, I do have to imagine that it does come down to personality here, because from what I know, Numlocked was the basically the leader of this team. Like he was the one who talked to Dignitas most. He was the one who was kind of like the de facto head of the team within Dignitas. So yeah, I think you're probably right, Flame. It does come down to a personality thing here.
It absolutely is, and I actually know more than I'm letting on about that. That's not fit for air, which I apologize is a huge tease. But I guess the other thing, what was I going to say here about this, is that the one upside for Dignitas is that Linkser, his level of play has actually gone up quite a bit in recent times, where at one point Linkser is like, oh, he's a really good Widow, he's keeping things in check, but not super crazy, to playing just shut down Mei, shut down Genji, just really coming into his own. I just don't know if he's going to have the absolute support that he's going to need in this current Dignitas roster.
It makes me a little bit sad because I bring this up every time I talk about this team. But the core of this team is from Dirty Bomb. They were the strongest team in Dirty Bomb for months and months and months, and Artier was part of that. It was Lynx, Artier, and Drakeus who were that core. So that team is starting to vanish even more into the annals of Dirty Bomb history, which is like a really huge game. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but I'm just kidding. It was very niche, but yeah. I think we should get on to the actual tournaments, because we can actually talk about some of these rosters.
I agree, and just as a last note on that, I do hope Artier and Numlocked get on a good team soon, because both of them definitely deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once Seb gets off his 4G internet, I think he'll be able to solidify himself as a top streamer or something. Like people like watching him anyway. He's very entertaining and he's got a really good personality. So they'll figure it out.
All right, let's talk about Asian